Welcome back to the Evolving Warfighter. We continue this audiobook with Chapter 5 of clarifying the definition, techniques, and integration of self-development to enhance Army Officer Leader Development. Copyright 2016, Franklin C. Annis, ed.D. ISBN 9781521311615. The right of Franklin C. Annis to be identified as author of this work has been asserted by him in accordance with Sections 77 and 78 of the Copyright, Designs and Patents Act 1988. All rights reserved. The dissertation manuscript was edited for the purposes of producing an audiobook. Any in-text citation will not be read, but the reference to the various sources and authors will be displayed in the text on screen. Before we begin, we invite you to subscribe to the Evolving Warfighter for more videos on the topics of military self-development and military history. Chapter 5, Implications, Recommendations, and Conclusions. The purpose of this qualitative electronic Delphi study was to define the concept of self-development as it applies to Army Officer Leader Development and to develop provisional training protocols or curricula to facilitate rapid acquisition of self-development skills among Army officers. The study explored the definitions of self-development, both the currently utilized definition by the U.S. Army and the civilian definition composed by Malcolm Knowles, and proposed a definition of self-development specific to Army officers. The study further explored what practical self-development techniques could be utilized to improve each of the Army leadership dimensions. Finally, the study explored how the discovered self-development practices could be integrated into the existing Army Reserve Officer Training Corps program curriculum. The problem that this study aimed to address was the fact that the Army Reserve Officer Training Corps program, which produces over 55% of commissioned officers, is failing to cultivate the self-development skills required to be adaptive leaders. The current design of Reserve Officer Training Corps lacks instruction on critical skills, like self-development, required to solve complex problems that officers are likely to encounter during their initial assignments. In the 240-hour curriculum of classroom instruction in Reserve Officer Training Corps, only a single one-hour lesson is dedicated to self-development. This lack of focus on self-development is having a major impact on Army leaders, as it is impossible to achieve optimum potential without the active component of self-development. With officers asked to lead in high-stress environments and venture into non-traditional military roles in modern warfare, it is critical that officers possess the ability to self-direct their education as required to ensure mission accomplishment. A qualitative electronic Delphi research method was utilized for this study. Limitations and ethical dimensions. This study was fortunate to have experienced senior officers participate as members of the Delphi panels. These officers had experience being commissioned officers themselves, had functioned as first-line leaders for other officers, and now functioned as senior raters to junior officers. Expert panelists also had experience in instructing future officers in either the Army Officer Candidate School or the Reserve Officer Training Corps. The experience level of the panelists' strength lent itself well to the use of the Delphi research method. Officers of both the regular Army, also known as active duty, and Army National Guard participated in this study. Despite these strengths on participants' expertise, one limitation of the study was there were no experts on the panel from the Army Reserve. Although attempts were made to recruit members of the Army Reserve, these attempts failed. It is recommended that further research includes all three components of the U.S. Army, Regular Army, Army Reserve, and Army National Guard. Members of the Army National Guard, another reserve component of the U.S. Army, share many of the same viewpoints and experience as Army Reserve officers. The expert panelists that did participate in the study had significant experience in Army leader development and produced a significant volume of data. While the target of 12 to 15 panelists was met during the recruitment phase, there was a noted drop in participation rates during the study. 13 participants volunteered for the study, with 9 officers participating in the first survey, 8 participating in the second survey, and 4 participating in the final 2 survey iterations. Despite problems with participant retention, the convergence of participants' responses around a select set of themes described within this chapter demonstrates that the topic of Army self-development was reliably amenable to Delphi methods employed in this study. participants produced large amounts of feedback and data that required considerable time to process and prepare for the following survey iterations. The amount of data collected created lengthy survey iterations that already taxed the senior officer participants that also faced great responsibilities in their military duties. Increasing the numbers of participants would likely have only increased the time demands on the participants' already limited schedules. Therefore, the smaller than intended panel size struck an ideal balance between usable data extracted and demands on the participants. The researcher is grateful for the support for this research that was provided by the participating officers. This study was conducted in a manner that ensures the ethical protection of the participants. The tenets of the Belmont Report, including informed consent, protection of participants' privacy and confidentiality, were strictly observed. Additionally, this research complied with all required specified in Department of Defense Instruction No. 3216.02 concerning research involving Department of Defense personnel. Contained within Chapter 5 is 3 key sections. The first section will discuss the implications of this research and is organized by research question. This section will include recommendations for continued research. The second section includes recommendations drawn from the results of this study. Finally, this chapter will be summarized in a conclusion. Implications. The key finding of this research is that while it was possible to derive many practical self-development techniques to address the majority of Army leadership dimensions, there is still a significant gap between participants' understanding of Army self-development theory and the ability to recommend practical techniques that fall within this domain of the Army leader development model. This key finding carries implications for the training of new officers at the Army Training and Doctrine Command, the U.S. Army Cadet Command, and individual Army officers may wish to consider. Implications are discussed by the research questions below. To the author's knowledge, this is the first study that attempted to marry the concept of Army self-development with the dimensional leadership theory of the Army leadership dimensions. While other scholars presented possible ways of conducting self-development practices, this is the first study in which individuals could search for practical self-development techniques to address weaknesses in specific leadership dimensions. Being the first research to do so, the retention requirement was set relatively low as the purpose of the research was to discover practical self-development techniques but not identify the best of these approaches. It is recommended that this study is repeated to discover more self-development techniques in addition to raising the retention requirements to increase the level of specificity provided for each technique, further discussed below. Question 1. How is self-development defined within the scope of Army officer leader development and how should it be defined? Emphasis on a continuous cycle of assessment and reassessment. The major theme that becomes apparent from the participants' response in the evaluation of known self-development definitions and the development of a specific self-development definition for junior Army officers was a theme related to continuous cycle of assessment and reassessment. A lack of an explicitly stated cycle of continuous reassessment was the primary objection presented to Malcolm Knowles' definition of self-directed learning. Of the 32 clauses accepted to form the specific self-development definition for junior Army officers listed above, 11 address the need for assessment and 2 address reassessment. This represents 40.6% of suggested and accepted clauses. Recommendation to emphasize the importance of assessment and reassessment in the concept of self-development has been presented by other scholars including Beagle. Participants clearly understood the concept of self-development as it applies to Army officers as continuous lifelong process. Robert Craig, of assessment and development to address the discovered weaknesses. The use of this specific language implies that the panelists may be drawing upon civilian theories of lifelong learning or at the very least echoing the language of the Army Training and Leader Development Panel. Question 2. What self-development techniques could be utilized to enhance each of the Army leadership dimensions? Known self-development techniques. During the initial survey iteration, participants were asked to list known self-development techniques with emphasis on techniques that would allow junior officers to rapidly acquire new skills and knowledge required for problem-solving in complex operational environments with limited situational awareness. A full list is presented in Appendix A. While the majority of the known self-development techniques were later suggested to address specific Army leadership dimensions, there were a few suggestions that did not appear later in this study. These possibly valuable recommendations included attending languages training, cultural awareness training, watching TED Talks, utilizing virtual training, and finally utilizing the Junior Officer Development Support Form. Many of these known techniques have been presented for general application from other scholars. Beagle presenting techniques of 360-degree assessment, establishing goals, and conducting book reviews, reading, among his self-development recommendations. Journaling, reflection writing, has also been recommended as a self-development technique and was suggested to be included in the Army Reserve Officer Training Corps curriculum. Physical fitness. Given that the participants that were surveyed in this study work or have worked first-hand with new recruits, this emphasis on physical fitness may have been derived from the deteriorating physical fitness of our nation as a whole. Davis reported only 17.9% of the 32.6 million youth between the ages of 17 to 24 are available for military service due to educational, moral, legal, and physical fitness shortcomings. Even when the educational requirements for entry are lowered to a GED equivalent, less than 1 in 4, 23.6%, of youth are eligible for military service. Due to population growth trends, this eligible recruitment pool is further being reduced at a trend of 55% per year. While the Army has invested great resources on unfit recruits, this investment often fails, with about 25% of males and 33% of females who fail the fitness test during initial entry training will leave the Army in the first 6 months. The research participants in this study would likely have direct experience with the struggles of trying to improve the overall fitness standards of millennial generations leaders to ensure they not only have the physical capability to complete the physical tasks at hand but also have the ability to do so while maintaining command and control over their assigned soldiers. Specificity of suggested self-development techniques. The specificity of the recommended self-development techniques varied greatly. Many of these suggestions list complete thought processes that would be fairly easy for soldiers at all levels to execute. For example, Army values: understand the definition of each value and write down how to emulate and instill these values on and off duty. Other suggestions were far less descriptive and, a result, less useful to end user. For example, mental agility, reading and writing. While it does provide an exercise that can be used to conduct self-development, it does not provide critical information of what, how to, or to what ends required to fully maximize these techniques. While the new Field Manual 6-22 does provide expanding guidance on how to conduct professional readings, there are many subtasks to the self-development process that are often left unwritten and unspoken. While the specific, or micro-level, techniques account for approximately 80% of the suggested techniques, continued research is required to dissect further and refine the remaining 20% of the macro-level recommendations. The need for specific guidance to ensure self-development techniques become valuable to the end user was put rather poetically by Beagle: before pointing Johnny to a book, you have to ensure that Johnny can read. The lack of comprehensive guidance within these suggested self-development techniques may be due to the high level of experience of the study participants. These officers possess a career's worth of experience in leadership dimensions and may assume that others understand or can determine subtasks associated with larger collective tasks. One recommendation to improve research in practical self-development techniques would be to present questions in the form of a case study or scenario. Officers are accustomed to mentoring subordinates on specific leadership challenges, having the benefit of understanding the larger situational context. If these questions were placed in a case study or scenario format, it may be more likely that responses could be more specific and detailed. Lack of suggestions for all leadership dimensions. After the removal of suggested self-development techniques that were determined to be operational or institutional in nature, it was revealed that participants did not produce any recommendations for 2 Army leadership dimensions: leads others and gets results. Given that both of these leadership dimensions are very closely tied with the operational pillar of the Army leader development model, It is understandable that participants may struggle to recommend a self-development practice that improves the individual leader in their ability to directly lead others. Another possible reason for the lack of self-development recommendations in these dimensions is while the U.S. Army has a defined Army leader development model with distinctively defined pillars, Army officers, in general, do not make such harsh divisions in leadership development theory but rather approach leader development as an integrated system. More discussion on this point continues in the following section. Filtered results. Upon further examination of the 39 recommended techniques that were removed from the study for not being a self-development technique, it appears that the participants struggled with the translation of the theory of self-development to executable recommendations. While all the submitted suggestions may be and are likely important to the development of junior officers, not all of these would fit into the self-development pillar of the Army leader development model. These results create questions of if the Army development leadership model is understood by officers and is congruent with the general approach to leadership development. Other scholars, such as Beagle, have been calling for the revision of the Army leader development model to refine the concept of self-development and how it interacts with the other domains and complexities of leader development. The Army stresses the do leadership philosophy in the Army Leadership Field Manual 6-22. The problem with this model is that it focuses purely on end states and desired behaviors. While the Army seems to know what a good leader is and does, it does not reference how to become a good leader if a soldier does not possess these characteristics or behaviors. This situation has been noted by other scholars such as Maurer and Lipstrue. As seen in the pilot study, many of the self-development recommendations received as a reply to the first survey iteration reflects the focus on the desired end state, simply emphasizes the importance of the leadership dimension, or provides best practices better placed in the operational pillar of the Army leader development model. Question 3. How can the selected self-development techniques be integrated into Army Reserve Officer Training Corps program? The participation level during the third and fourth survey iteration dropped to 4 participants, 31%. With this level of participation, the validity and reliability of the research results become highly questionable. To further complicate this matter, only one participant, utilizing the pen name Vernon J. Baker, replied to the question concerning the integration of the discovered self-development techniques into the Army Reserve Officer Training Corps curriculum in the manner intended and demonstrated in the example. His recommendations are listed in Appendix C. It is to be noted that this participant encountered difficulty with the SurveyMonkey system and was unable to submit further suggestions for the Military Science 301 through Military Science 402 semesters before the end of the survey iteration due to demands of pre-mobilization training. While the participation rate during the later survey iterations did drop, it is to be noted that all of Vernon J. Baker's recommendations achieved the minimum required rating for retention, further displaying the homogeneity of the panelists. Other participants responded in more generic ways, such as stating, self-development techniques can be incorporated throughout the entire process. George W. G. Boyce, Jr. Participants placed emphasis on importance of leadership dimensions and best practices were also noted during the final 2 survey iterations. 2 of the 4 participants that responded to the final 2 surveys provided reply to survey questions that justified what was being taught and how the materials were being taught, but these suggestions did not pertain to the discovered self-development techniques or further recommendations for self-development techniques. As noted above, this may be a result of the emphasis of Army research on what an Army leader does versus how a leader becomes. The one new recommendation for a self-development practice during this survey iteration was to have the cadets create and present an individual development plan. This suggestion would encourage cadets to engage in self-development with specific plans and techniques that are tailored to their specific needs. This approach may avoid the pitfalls in requiring every leader to engage in the same cookie-cutter self-development approach. This approach, however, would require a higher level of mentorship from Reserve Officer Training Corps cadre to ensure that cadets both understand their leader development needs and understand techniques that may be complementary to their learning style. It was the hopes of the researcher that if cadets could be introduced to self-development practices in the Army Reserve Officer Training Corps program, that they would be more likely to continue these practices throughout their military careers. Due to reliability and validity problems, further analysis of these responses will not be provided. However, it is strongly recommended that another study repeats this line of questioning to ensure the optimization of the Army Reserve Officer Training Corps curriculum. Recommendations. 1. With respect to the first aim of the study, to define self-development as it applies to Army officers, experts recommended that the current Army definition of self-development be revised to emphasize that self-development is a self-driven, individual process and that it is cyclical in nature with continuous assessment and reassessment. 2. With respect to methods of self-development, it is recommended that the discovered self-development techniques, displayed in Appendix B, be presented to cadets and junior Army officers so they might adopt these practices or shape other self-development practices that closely resemble the discovered techniques. 3. With respect to the identification of the most appropriate self-development methods that can quickly and effectively be integrated into Reserve Officer Training Corps curriculum so as to enable consistent attainment of these skills during Reserve Officer Training Corps training, experts recommended the creation and presentation of an individual development plan combined with the recommendations from Vernon J. Baker listed in Appendix C. Conclusion. The Reserve Officer Training Corps program, which produces over 55% of commissioned officers for the Army, is failing to cultivate the self-development skills required to be adaptive leaders. The lack of focus on self-development is having a major impact on Army leaders as it is impossible to achieve optimum potential without the active component of self-development. This research was specifically designed to employ the understanding of Army self-development theory, identify practical self-development techniques and suggest methods to rapidly integrate these techniques within the Army Reserve Officer Training Corps program to improve junior officer performance. This research utilized the qualitative Delphi research method utilizing a panel of expert senior Army officers accustomed to the needs of junior officer development. The panelists provided great insight into the theory and application of Army self-development. The panel gained consensus on the three primary research questions of developing a definition of self-development specific to Army officers, identifying practical self-development techniques for each of the Army leader dimensions, and finally recommending way the discovered practical self-development techniques might be integrated into the Army Reserve Officer Training Corps program. This study demonstrated that participants were able to create a definition of self-development as it applies to Army officer development. Special emphasis was placed by expert panelists within this definition to stress the need for constant assessment and reassessment while conducting self-development. The high mean ratings of each recommended clause and the fact that all recommended clauses meet the retention threshold indicates that there is a collective understanding and agreement of the concept of self-development within the context of the U.S. Army. However, while the theory of self-development may be understood, the practical application of self-development techniques and the separation of techniques of self-development from other domains of the Army leader development model remains less defined and understood. It is this lack of clear transition from theory to practice that further reinforces the need for continued research into specific and executable self-development techniques. Approximately 36% of the recommendations of the expert panelist for practical self-development technique were in fact aligned more closely with the other two domains of the Army leader development model and were filtered out of the study. This resulted in 68 practical self-development techniques being recommended and accepted by the expert panelists. As noted above, the fact that all practical self-development techniques recommended meet retention standard displays a large degree of homogeneity of the concept of self-development among the expert participants. The specificity of recommendations ranged greatly, with detailed descriptions of the activity with a specific end state to recommendations that consisted of only a few words. Further research will be required to further explore practical self-development techniques and ensure techniques are provided sufficient instruction to be understood by an inexperienced cadet/officer candidate or junior officer. Participants in this study also proved that it was possible to make recommendations of the incorporation of the discovered practical self-development techniques into the Army Reserve Officer Training Corps curriculum. Specific recommendations were suggested and accepted for the freshman and sophomore year of the Reserve Officer Training Corps program. Additionally, it was recommended that cadets develop and present individual development plans as part of this integrations process. These recommendations are useful for two reasons. First, it demonstrates that cadets could be mentored to select the best self-development techniques to meet their needs and best adapt to their learning style. This would also avoid the cookie-cutter approach that could cause cadets to turn away from self-development practices that could occur in untailored approaches. Second, it demonstrates that practical self-development techniques could be easily integrated into the existing curriculum with the hope of any exposed cadets to self-development techniques in Reserve Officer Training Corps they would be likely to continue these activities throughout their military career. This research was unique in the fact that it was the first attempt to marry the concept of Army self-development with specific recommendations to address each of the Army leadership dimensions. While numerous authors and researchers have suggested various self-development techniques in past research, this research was intended to produce recommendation with the specificity that they would be understood and executed by junior Army officers. Further research is recommended to continue the process of identifying and elaborating on practical self-development techniques that could explain to and executed by junior Army leaders. The Army Training and Doctrine Command, including the U.S. Army Cadet Command, could utilize the information gained from this study to further advance the understanding and practice of self-development in junior Army officers. Appendix A, Known Self-Development Techniques. The following self-development techniques were listed by a participant utilizing the pen name of George W. G. Boyce, Jr., Junior Officer Development Support Form, if still available. Officer Evaluation Form. Officer Mentoring Program, should be junior officer initiated. Non-commissioned officer mentoring/teaching junior officers. Non-military processes that could be implemented. The following self-development techniques were listed by a participant utilizing the pen name of Vernon J. Baker. Know and be who you are. Identify and utilize mentors in important areas of your professional and personal life. Become a mentor for someone both personally and professionally. Challenge yourself, but set realistic goals and objectives. Don't be afraid to fail. Do routine things routinely. Reflect, reassess, re-engage. The following self-development techniques were listed by a participant utilizing the pen name of Ernest Childers. Institutional training, basic officer leader course, pre-ranger, combat training centers/maneuver training centers, virtual training. Languages training. Cultural awareness. TED Talks. The following self-development techniques were listed by a participant utilizing the pen name of Armand E. Fisher. Self-study, such as reading about how other successful strategic leaders applied techniques to successfully lead others and change. I recommend Duty, Memories of a Secretary of War or A Passion for Leadership by Robert Gates. Humility, be open to hearing others' ideas, especially those with more experience. Ask questions. Mentoring from mid-grade to senior leaders. Observation of other leaders. The following self-development techniques were listed by a participant utilizing the pen name of Robert Craig. Initiative. Adaptive. Able to absorb feedback, counseling, or advice and implement it into the individual's decision-making progress. Being able to put yourself into a position where the individual knows that the problem set or environment is complex and requires a multifaceted solution. Communication, to include the ability to actively listen, have the desire to continuously improve, incorporate the feedback/assessment/after-action review process into the problem-solving process. The following self-development techniques were listed by a participant utilizing the pen name of Audie L. Murphy. Reading lists, professional or not, books, articles, web sources, reflection writing. Observation of others. Formal, informal, and non-formal classes. Roadmap, the plan for self-development. The following self-development techniques were listed by a participant utilizing the pen name of Daley Christensen. As a professor of military science, I incline to categorize these into the categories of scholar, athlete, and leader. 1. Scholar. A. Professional schools. The officer needs to ensure they are competitive for the selective schools and is in line to attend those that are mandatory. B. Civilian education. C. Professional reading. I know a young PhD in physics who spends an hour each day reading journal articles in his field. D. Present your ideas. Develop a forum to share ideas among peers. Put the ideas learned in professional reading, civilian education, and professional schools into briefings for others to share the knowledge. By sharing knowledge, the learning goes deeper. 2. Athlete. Give yourself fitness goals and create a plan to close the gap. If you are a 270 Army Physical Fitness Test officer, set the goal of getting and maintaining a 300. If you are a 300 APFT officer, set your sights on competitive athletic events like the Army 10-miler, local road races, or local endurance competitions. 3. Leader. Seek opportunities to take leadership positions outside the Army. By serving in civic or volunteer organizations in leadership roles, you have the opportunity to practice the Army's troop leading procedures and the military decision-making process in unique ways. These non-Army leadership experiences frequently provide unique insights into Army methods and make us better at executing troop leading procedures and military decision-making process in our official roles. This is especially true if the outside leadership experience is in a high-context organization unlike the Army's low-context style. Appendix B, Discovered Self-Development Techniques. The following self-development techniques were recommended and reviewed created during this study. Please note that the weighted mean is presented in parentheses and the standard deviation is presented in square brackets. 1. Army values. Understand the definition of each value and write down how to emulate and instill these values on and off duty. 4.0, 0.5774. 2. Army values. Volunteer for a set number of hours with a local charitable or military service organization. 3.8, 0.8367. 3. Army values. Reassess my most important Army value and explain your reasoning to a peer or key staff member. 3.4, 0.5477. 4. Army values. Write a 2 to 3 page reflection paper on an event that challenged your character and how the Army values helped. 3.8, 0.4472. 5. Army values. Develop a new list of Army values. If you are unable to keep/use any of the current ones or define the new values by using the old values. 3.6, 1.1402. 6. Army values. Constantly try to implement Army values every day, and self-reflection. You have to practice good character. 3.6, 1.1402. 7. Empathy. Visit and speak with wounded warriors in the hospital or warrior transition unit. 4.2, 0.4472. 8. Empathy. Rehearse your counseling sessions before they start with a special focus on how it will be received. Know what you are going to say and how it will impact the counseled. 4.0, 0.0. 9. Empathy. Be willing to listen and learn about others. Leaders cannot be rigid in thought. 3.8, 0.4772. 10. Warrior Ethos. Service ethos. Continue to challenge yourself, and put forth your best effort. Do not cherry-pick what you want to do. 4.2, 0.8367. 11. Warrior Ethos. Service ethos. This may sound strange, but, when I put on my uniform in the morning, I look in the mirror and recite the first part of the Soldier's Creed. 3.2, 1.3038. 12. Warrior Ethos. Service ethos. Select a book reading and follow with their discussion. 4.0, 0.7071. 13. Warrior Ethos. Service ethos. Physical fitness as a lifestyle, not as a service requirement. 4.57, 0.5345. 14. Warrior Ethos. Service ethos. Consider how your actions/inactions affect those around you. 4.14, 0.3780. 15. Discipline. Know what the standards are and never accept less. 4.29, 0.4880. 16. Discipline. Keep a reflection journal tied to some other developmental technique, i.e. physical training development plan. 3.8, 0.8367. 17. Discipline. Execute on self-development activity daily in either the scholar, athlete, or leader areas. 3.8, 0.4472. 18. Military and professional bearing. Participation in junior officer boards, similar to soldier/non-commissioned officer of the month/quarter/year, but for officers. 3.8, 0.4772. 19. Military and professional bearing. Learn about military customs and courtesies. 4.0, 0.0. 20. Military and professional bearing. Consider your audiences, different approaches for different audiences. 4.29, 0.4880. 21. Military and professional bearing. Put forth effort in maintaining yourself and your equipment. 4.0, 0.0. 22. Fitness, supplement, physical fitness training, with your own program. 4.4, 0.5477. 23. Fitness. Find something that you are passionate about, for example CrossFit, running, races, or lifting. 4.4, 0.5477. 24. Fitness. Develop a physical training plan with clear performance objectives and a reasonable end date. 4.0, 0.7071. 25. Fitness. Fitness is not natural to all, thus, it must be understood that discipline and professionalism are required. 4.29, 0.4880. 26. Fitness. Choose physical fitness as a lifestyle, not as a service requirement. Be physically active every day. 4.5, 0.5477. 27. Fitness. Balance physical, emotional, spiritual, social, and family needs. List your vocation in each of these 5 areas. What are you called to do in support of each of these areas? How can you improve your performance in relation to these areas? 4.0, 0.0. 28. Confidence. Conduct a speech in front of an organization or group on Veterans Day. 4.2, 0.4472. 29. Confidence. Get outside your comfort zone. For our cadets, this is often first encountered at the rappel tower. Find rappel tower, proverbially speaking, and hook up. 3.8, 0.4472. 30. Confidence. Confidence comes with being a student of your profession. Be a subject matter expert in your job and have a good understanding of the jobs of those around you. 4.17, 0.4082. 31. Resilience. Focus on positive outcomes and do not lose your sense of humor. 4.4, 0.5477. 32. Resilience. Read a book or interact with others that have it harder than you. 3.43, 0.9759. 33. Resilience. Don't be afraid to ask for help. 4.29, 0.4880. 34. Resilience. Write a short paper on a key lesson learned from a personal loss or setback. 4.0, 0.7071. 35. Mental agility. Embrace puzzles and games that require critical thinking and/or logic, chess, Sudoku, etc. 4.2, 0.8366. 36. Mental agility. Never stop learning. Learn beyond your job. Always look for new challenges. Stay fit. 4.0, 0.5774. 37. Mental agility, reading and writing. 4.0, 0.7071. 38. Sound judgment. Constantly practice making good decisions and do not be afraid to make significant changes mid-course. 4.4, 0.5477. 39. Sound judgment comes with being a subject matter expert in your field. 3.29, 0.9512. 40. Sound judgment. Develop a group of peers to discuss current issues in confidence. See Leo Bottery's new book, The Power of Peers. 3.4, 0.8944. 41. Innovation. See how others are attacking similar problems and seek a unique solution for your particular problem. Don't be afraid to try something new. 4.14, 0.3780. 42. Innovation. Most of us have innovative ideas, have the courage to execute one of them. Find a mold that needs breaking and break it. 3.4, 0.5477. 43. Interpersonal Tact, by Time When Mad. 4.0, 0.0. 44. Interpersonal Tact, think before you speak or respond to an email. Wait until you have control of your emotions before you react. 4.33, 0.5164. 45. Interpersonal Tact, create and deliver a presentation on professional development reading. 3.2, 0.8367. 46. Expertise, ask others who have mastered a certain area for help. 4.0, 0.0. 47. Expertise, military occupational specialty test, unit competitions that are based on MOS skills. 3.6, 0.5477. 48. Expertise, take 15 minutes per day to learn something new about your job and 15 minutes per day about a subordinate's or supporting agency's job. 4.29, 0.4880. 49. Expertise, spend time reading in your field, branch, unit type, force projection region, etc. 4.0, 0.0. 50. Expertise, seek outside leadership opportunities in civic and or volunteer organizations. 3.8, 0.4472. 51. Builds trust, keep your word. Trust builds loyalty. Leaders must understand that no matter how good you are, if soldiers do not trust you, they will not follow you. 4.43, 0.5345. 52. Builds trust, shared hardship and consistent actions. 3.8, 0.8366. 53. Builds trust, demonstrate integrity by owning mistakes. As a leader you must absorb blame and pass accolades to others. 4.0, 0.0. 54. Extends influence beyond the chain of command, develop positive relationships outside of your organization. Find things your organization is not doing well and how it impacts the other organizations and work together to develop a solution. Showing you care goes a long way and will earn you the benefit of the doubt in the future. 4.0, 0.0. 55. Extends influence beyond the chain of command, make your colleagues into friends, your friends into allies, and your alliances into a force. This has been especially true as a professor of military science on a college campus. Extending influence begins by extending casual working relationships into trust-bound relationships with mutual goals. 4.0, 0.0. 56. Leads by example, do what your soldiers are doing. 3.6, 0.8944. 57. Communicates, write a reflective paper on self-development to be submitted with the support form prior to first annual evaluation. 3.8, 0.8366. 58. Communicates, conduct a speech in front of an organization or group on Veterans Day. 3.8, 0.4472. 59. Communicates, set aside time every day to talk to others about what is important to them. 3.86, 0.3780. 60. Creates a positive environment, fosters esprit de corps, assume your staff is doing their best with the training and resources you have provided. Logically, then, all shortfalls are the fault of training or resources. Such an approach demonstrates respect for your subordinates and sets a positive tone. 3.6, 0.5477. 61. Prepare self, complete the global assessment tracker and develop a plan of action to address areas for improvement. 3.8, 0.4472. 62. Prepare self, read. 4.4, 0.5477. 63. Prepare self, maintain fitness. 4.2, 0.4472. 64. Prepare self. Preparation comes from clearly understanding what the requirements is. If you don't know, ask. 4.14, 0.3780. 65. Prepare self. Execute daily short, mid and long-range schedule reviews. 4.0, 0.7071. 66. Develop others. Invite 2 junior soldiers, not necessarily in your chain of authority/command, into a mentor relationship. 4.0, 0.7071. 67. Stewards the profession. Always be a professional. Education others on your profession. 4.14, 0.3780. 68. Get results. Set and track your goals with metrics. 3.8, 0.4472. Appendix C, Recommendations to Integrate Discovered Self-Development Technique by Vernon J. Baker. The following is a list of suggestions of how to integrate the discovered self-development techniques into the Army Reserve Officer Training Corps curriculum recommended by a panelist utilizing the pen name of Vernon J. Baker. Please note that the weighted mean is presented in parentheses and the standard deviation is presented in square brackets. Military Science 101, incorporate the following techniques into the overarching theme of the Military Science 101 curriculum. Hit on them throughout the semester as they are timeless and build a good foundation. 1. Army values. Understand the definition of each value and write down how to emulate and instill these values on and off duty. 13. Warrior Ethos. Physical fitness as a lifestyle, not as a service requirement. 15. Discipline. Know what the standards are and never accept less. 51. Builds trust. Keep your word. Trust builds loyalty. Leaders must understand that no matter how good you are, if soldiers do not trust you, they will not follow you. 53. Builds trust. Demonstrate integrity by owning mistakes. As a leader you must absorb blame and pass accolades to others. 64. Prepare self. Preparation comes from clearly understanding what the requirement is. If you don't know, ask. 3.75, 0.7071. Military Science 102, maintain previous techniques learned in Military Science 101. Add 13, Warrior Ethos, Service Ethos, Physical Fitness as a Lifestyle, not as a service requirement. 14, Warrior Ethos, Service Ethos, consider how your actions/inactions affect those around you. And 59, communicates, set aside time every day to talk to others about what is important to them. Techniques. 4.0, 0.0. Military Science 201, this semester appears to be more hands-on and intensive. Students should carry over techniques from previous semesters but focus of the following techniques during Military Science 201, 13, Warrior Ethos, Service Ethos, Physical Fitness as a Lifestyle, not as a service requirement. 14, Warrior Ethos, Service Ethos, consider how your actions/inactions affect those around you. And 15, Discipline, know what the standards are and never accept less. 4.0, 0.0. Military Science 202, this appears to be where cadets start to establish their leader identity. There should be much reflection, thin skin, and feedback in order to allow cadets to develop. 13, Warrior Ethos, Service Ethos, Physical Fitness as a Lifestyle, not as a service requirement. 14, Warrior Ethos, Service Ethos, consider how your actions/inactions affect those around you. 15, Discipline, know what the standards are and never accept less. 32, Resilience, read a book or interact with others that have it harder than you. 44, Interpersonal Tact, think before you speak or respond to an email. Wait until you have control of your emotions before you react. 53, builds trust, demonstrate integrity by owning mistakes. As a leader you must absorb blame and pass accolades to others. And 64, prepare self. Preparation comes clearly understanding what the requirements is. If you don't know, ask. 4.25, 0.7071. References. The full list of references is being displayed on screen. Thank you for watching this video. For more academic works by Dr. Anis, please visit orcid.org/0000-0001-5615-1607. Join in the conversation by subscribing to the Evolving Warfighter at youtube.com/The Evolving Warfighter or find us on Twitter, @EvolvingWar. Until next time, focus on your self-development so we can dominate the modern battlefield.